What if one of the most surprising performance engines of the next few years doesn't come from a massive V8 or a complicated hybrid system, but from Mazda? At a time when most automakers are racing toward electrification, Mazda has taken a very different path. While many brands are adding layers of hybrid technology, batteries and electric motors, Mazda's engineers focused on something much simpler but incredibly powerful, a brand new 3.3-liter turbocharged inline-6 engine. And the performance numbers are starting to surprise a lot of people, because this isn't just another engine update. This powertrain represents a completely different philosophy about how modern vehicles should deliver power, efficiency, and reliability. Instead of relying on heavy hybrid systems to boost performance, Mazda refined the heart of the vehicle itself, the engine. The result is a smooth, high-torque inline-6 that delivers strong performance while maintaining impressive efficiency in real-world driving. But here's where things get interesting. Mazda didn't just build this engine to compete with traditional gasoline engines. They designed it to challenge something much bigger, the growing dominance of hybrid powertrains. For years, hybrids have been marketed as the perfect middle ground between gasoline engines and full electric vehicles. And in certain situations, especially city driving, that's absolutely true. But Mazda's engineers looked deeper. They asked a simple question: what happens when drivers leave the city? What about long highway trips, heavy SUVs, towing loads, or sustained high-speed driving? In those real-world scenarios, hybrids often rely mostly on their gasoline engines, while carrying the extra weight of batteries and electric motors. Mazda saw an opportunity. Instead of building a more complex system, they engineered a powertrain designed to operate efficiently under the exact conditions where many vehicles spend most of their lives: steady cruising, long distances, and real driving loads. And that's where the 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 starts to shine. The engine delivers strong low-end torque, smooth power delivery, and impressive balance thanks to its naturally stable inline-6 design. But performance is only part of the story, because the real surprise may be how this engine performs not just in acceleration, but in efficiency, durability, and long-term ownership. And once you understand the engineering behind it, you start to see why Mazda believes this engine could quietly become one of the smartest powertrains of the decade. But to understand why, we first need to talk about something most automakers have abandoned: the unique advantages of the inline-6 engine itself. To understand why Mazda's new 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 is getting so much attention, you have to start with the engine layout itself, because the inline-6 design isn't just another configuration. In the engineering world, it's widely considered one of the smoothest and most naturally balanced engine layouts ever created. Unlike V6 engines, an inline-6 doesn't need extra balance shafts or complicated vibration control systems to run smoothly. The pistons move in perfect harmony, naturally canceling out vibrations inside the engine. That might sound like a small detail, but it makes a huge difference. A naturally balanced engine experiences less internal stress. It runs smoother, generates less vibration, and often lasts longer because the mechanical components aren't constantly fighting against each other. That's one of the main reasons luxury brands have loved inline-6 engines for decades. But Mazda didn't bring the inline-6 back just for smoothness. They used it as the foundation for a completely new generation of performance and efficiency. The new 3.3-liter turbocharged inline-6 is designed to deliver strong power while maintaining excellent fuel economy in real-world driving. And that's where Mazda's engineering philosophy becomes very different from most manufacturers. Instead of building a smaller engine and relying heavily on hybrid systems to make up the performance gap, Mazda focused on creating a larger, naturally smoother engine that can operate efficiently under real driving conditions: highway cruising, long-distance driving, heavy vehicles like SUVs and crossovers, situations where engines spend most of their time working steadily rather than constantly accelerating and braking. The turbocharged inline-6 thrives in those conditions. Because of its design, the engine produces strong torque at low RPM. That means the vehicle doesn't need to constantly downshift or push the engine harder just to maintain speed. The result is smooth, effortless acceleration and stable fuel consumption, especially at highway speeds. And that's exactly where many hybrid systems start to lose their advantage. Electric motors are incredibly effective during stop-and-go traffic, where they can assist the engine during acceleration. But once a vehicle settles into steady cruising speeds, the gasoline engine ends up doing most of the work anyway. At that point, the hybrid system is essentially carrying extra weight. Mazda approached the problem differently. Instead of adding more technology, they refined the mechanical design itself. The inline-6 layout, combined with turbocharging and modern fuel injection, allows the engine to operate efficiently while delivering strong, consistent power. But the real surprise comes when you look at the torque this engine produces, and how it completely changes the driving experience. Because unlike many modern powertrains, this engine delivers something drivers immediately feel: effortless, continuous power. Now let's talk about the number that really defines this engine's character. Torque. Because when drivers experience Mazda's 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 for the first time, the thing they notice immediately isn't just horsepower, it's the effortless pulling power the engine delivers. Turbocharged inline-6 engines are naturally excellent at producing strong torque at low engine speeds, and Mazda engineered this powertrain specifically to take advantage of that strength. Instead of forcing the engine to rev high to make power, the 3.3-liter turbo produces a wide band of usable torque right from the lower RPM range. That means when you press the accelerator, the vehicle moves forward smoothly and confidently, without the engine needing to work hard. For everyday drivers, this creates a completely different driving feel. Acceleration becomes smooth and predictable. Passing on the highway feels effortless, and the vehicle maintains speed easily, even when climbing hills or carrying extra weight. This is especially important for SUVs and crossovers, which are heavier than traditional sedans and require more low-end power to feel responsive. Mazda's inline-6 delivers that power naturally. There's no sudden surge, no artificial boost from electric motors, and no complicated blending of power sources. Just a steady flow of torque that feels consistent at any speed. And that consistency is something many modern hybrid systems struggle to replicate. Hybrid vehicles often advertise impressive torque numbers, but much of that torque comes from electric motor assistance. When the battery is fully charged, the boost feels strong. But as the battery drains or conditions change, the power delivery can shift as well. Drivers sometimes notice this as uneven acceleration or delayed throttle response. Mazda's turbo inline-6 avoids that complexity entirely. The torque you feel comes directly from the engine itself. It's always available, always predictable, and always ready the moment you press the pedal. But performance isn't the only advantage here. The engine's ability to produce strong torque at lower RPM also improves efficiency. When an engine doesn't need to spin faster to maintain speed, it burns less fuel and generates less internal wear over time. That means smoother long-distance driving and potentially longer engine life. And that brings us to one of the most important advantages. Mazda believes this engine has over many hybrid systems: longevity. Because while hybrid technology is impressive, long-term ownership introduces a completely different set of challenges. And that's exactly where Mazda's simpler mechanical approach may quietly become the smarter choice. One of the biggest questions surrounding modern vehicles isn't just performance or fuel economy, it's what happens after years of ownership. Because the real test of any powertrain isn't the first few months on the road, it's how well it holds up after 5, 7, or even 10 years of daily driving. And this is where Mazda's 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 may have a major advantage. Modern hybrid systems are incredibly advanced, but they also combine multiple complex systems working together. You have the gasoline engine, electric motors, battery packs, cooling systems, inverters, power electronics, and sophisticated control software. When everything is new, these systems operate seamlessly. But as vehicles age, that complexity can create challenges. Battery performance slowly declines. Cooling systems become more demanding. Electronic components eventually wear out. And diagnosing problems can become more complicated and expensive once the vehicle moves beyond warranty coverage. Mazda's approach is very different. Instead of layering multiple systems together, the company focused on refining the core engine itself. The 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 is built around a simpler mechanical philosophy. Strong internal components, efficient combustion, and lower operating stress are all part of the design. Because this engine produces strong torque at low RPM, it doesn't need to constantly push itself to higher speeds to deliver power. Lower engine speeds mean less friction, reduced heat, and less long-term wear on internal components like bearings, pistons, and valve train systems. Diesel-style engineering principles also influence the design. The engine emphasizes durability, stable combustion, and improved oil control to maintain performance over long service intervals. For drivers who plan to keep their vehicles for many years, these details matter far more than short-term performance numbers. There's also another factor that often gets overlooked when discussing modern powertrains: the cost of ownership. Hybrid vehicles can sometimes benefit from incentives or tax credits when purchased new, but over a decade of ownership, the cost picture can shift. Battery replacements, high-voltage components, and specialized repairs can become expensive once vehicles age. Mazda's turbo inline-6 avoids most of that complexity. Routine maintenance remains familiar to technicians. Service procedures are straightforward, and there are no large battery packs or high-voltage systems involved. Over the long term, that mechanical simplicity can translate into lower maintenance costs and greater reliability. But efficiency, durability, and ownership costs still aren't the full story, because Mazda has always focused on something many automakers are starting to forget: the driving experience itself. Beyond the engineering numbers and efficiency claims, Mazda has always focused on something many drivers still care deeply about: how a car actually feels to drive. In an era where many vehicles are becoming quieter, heavier, and more software-controlled, Mazda continues to emphasize a connection between the driver and the machine, and the 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 plays a big role in that philosophy. Because of its naturally balanced design, the engine delivers incredibly smooth power. Acceleration feels linear and predictable, without the artificial sensation that sometimes comes from powertrains, constantly switching between electric and gasoline power. When you press the accelerator, the response feels immediate and natural. The power builds smoothly, the engine note remains refined, and the vehicle maintains a sense of mechanical confidence that many drivers still appreciate. This is particularly important in SUVs and larger crossovers, which are expected to handle everything from daily commuting to long road trips. These vehicles are heavier and often carry passengers, luggage, or towing loads. That means the powertrain needs to deliver consistent strength without constantly working at its limits. Mazda's turbocharged inline-6 fits this role perfectly. Its strong, low RPM torque allows the vehicle to move effortlessly, even under heavier loads. Highway cruising becomes relaxed and stable, and long-distance driving feels smooth and controlled. For many drivers, that kind of effortless performance matters far more than flashy numbers on a spec sheet. And when you combine that driving feel with strong efficiency and mechanical simplicity, Mazda's strategy begins to look very different from the industry trend. While many automakers are racing to add more technology, more electronics, and larger battery systems, Mazda chose to refine the fundamentals of engine design: better balance, better combustion efficiency, better long-term durability. The result is a powertrain that doesn't just perform well in laboratory tests, but one that's designed to perform consistently in the real world. That's why the reveal of Mazda's new 3.3-liter turbo inline-6 has surprised so many people in the automotive industry, because it proves that innovation doesn't always mean adding more complexity. Sometimes the smartest solution is improving the core technology that drivers already rely on. And as this engine begins appearing in more vehicles over the next few years, we may see something unexpected: a modern engine that quietly delivers performance, efficiency, and reliability in a way many people thought was disappearing. In an industry chasing the future at full speed, Mazda may have just reminded everyone that great engineering never goes out of style.